6 o'clock. Now calling to order the Mashpee Conservation Commission meeting, Thursday, October 14th, 2021. Is there anyone on the line or in the room that has business that is not on the agenda who would like to be heard?
Nobody on the line and nobody in the room for any non-hearing agenda items.
Thank you, Drew. If you could proceed with the pre and post meeting items.
Sure. So the first item up for approval are the meeting minutes of September 9th, 2021. And those commissioners present that can vote on these minutes are Brian, Tom, Brad, Chad, and Charlie.
Very good. We'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I entertain a motion to accept and approve meeting minutes from September 9th, 2021.
Second.
Thank you. Now voting. Tom.
Aye.
Brian.
Yes.
Paul.
Paul is not, he wasn't at the meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Brad.
Yes.
Charlie. Yes. I vote aye as well. Motion carried.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move to the next discussion item. This is in regards to, it's a little bit out of order from what you see on the pre-post agenda, but this is in regards to 36 Summersea Road. Bob Gray from Sebacia is here to represent the property owner. As the commission recalls, just to give a little background on this, this was the mitigation plan that was required from an enforcement order that we issued for violations that took place on the coastal bank. The project for the single-family home was issued an order of conditions with the specific condition that we receive and review a mitigation plan prior to commencement of work. So that's what's going to be before you tonight. And I will turn it over to Bob Gray. And I do have
See if they have it.
some images as well. Let me just get to those. Actually,
No, see, they got it right here.
so you should all have this that was sent out to you all in advance of tonight's meeting.
Okay.
This is description narrative of the proposed mitigation and then the actual plan itself. Did everybody receive this?
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, and staff. For the record, Bob Gray from Sebacia, and I'm representing Joe Anastos, who is the current owner of this property. As the commission members are well aware, some unpermitted work occurred sometime within the last year, year and a half. The work consisted of cutting of trees and perhaps some saplings on the face of a coastal bank. So on the plan that's up on the screen, the top of the coastal bank is depicted there, and essentially this cutting occurred seaward of the top of the coastal bank. This particular coastal bank transitions down to a salt marsh. There is a very substantial slope to the salt marsh. The lower portion of the coastal bank, as you see on the plan, is also land subject coastal storm flowage. Best as I can tell, there was no cutting in the flood zone. The cutting is confined to the midsection to the upper section of the coastal bank. Approximately 7, 8, 9 trees were felled by the previous owner or representatives that she hired, and those trees were left on the face of the coastal bank. And it's my understanding that when a recent site visit was arranged to have a pre-construction, pre-filing meeting, that the conservation agent, Mr. McManus, discovered the cutting, and that's what brings the matter before the commission. So the way forward, in my opinion, is to correct as best we can through mitigation for this unpermitted work. As I outlined in my narrative, I am not recommending any planting on the actual coastal bank, at least at this time. The trees that were cut were not stumped. They were not uprooted in any fashion, and all of the trees that were cut are showing a significant regrowth this growing season. My fear about moving ahead to actual replanting on the face of this bank is that to bring in saplings of the size of 6 to 8 or 10-foot saplings, that's going to be a pretty substantial root ball. It's going to cause quite a bit of disturbance in putting those into the ground. We will be disrupting the soil on a very steep slope, and the down gradient receptor is the salt marsh, very sensitive resource area, as you know. I think if the down gradient receptor was a coastal beach, a sandy beach, a rocky beach or something, I wouldn't be so reluctant. But I truly believe the best step here is to let nature repair what has taken place. Now, obviously, trees that were cut are going to take some time to reach the maturity that they were. I'm not recommending any supplemental planting in this first year, but I did receive some correspondence from Drew today, and I would concur that an additional site visit might be warranted to look at some bare areas on the bank, and perhaps we need some stabilization with jute netting, perhaps some kind of seed mix for stabilization. As best I could tell, the only damage to the shrub layer was likely due to combination of the trees that were cut that were lying on the shrubs better part of this growing season, and when they were removed, and they have all been removed from the site, some of the shrubs were broken and so forth through the removal process. Shrubs are very resilient, and as long as their root system wasn't uprooted, they should bounce back. And my opinion is that at this time next year, you should have a fairly thick shrub layer on that coastal bank. We also, at this time next year, can look at what the condition is, and if the commission, through your agent, feels that we need to do supplemental planting, we can entertain that at that time. What we're also proposing to do to mitigate for the illegal work, the area that you see a lot of plants up there is a proposed buffer zone mitigation area. And that area is presently a Cape Cod lawn grass, not a manicured, but it's lawn grass. There is no real shrubby or woody growth. The proposal is to eliminate that area as lawn and to plant shrubs, woody shrubs within that area. And we, through Curidosi Landscape Design, who prepared this plan, selected some plants, and that is indicated on the plan as well as in my narrative. We've indicated the numbers as well as the species. one of the complications for moving forward is you've just recently issued an order of conditions for the site, which involves demolition of the existing structure with an intent to build a new structure. So I'm going to ask for some guidance from the commission. I'm recommending that you not require this buffer zone to be replanted at this time, because I'm afraid that during the demolition and the reconstruction, much of that buffer zone planting will get destroyed. So I'd like to see if the commission would allow for the buffer zone to be replanted in 2022, possibly late in the spring. I don't know how that goes with the schedule for the actual construction. We could even put it off to the fall of 2022, and when the landscaping for the whole site is done, this buffer zone can be planted at that time. So at this point, I'd like to hear your thoughts, and please understand that the document submitted was a starting document, and I indicated it's very fluid. Everything can change based on where you'd like to go with this.
Thank you. Drew, would you like to offer comments on the plan?
Sure.
Thank you.
So Bob had gone over some of the comments. I agree that, for all intents and purposes, to try and establish trees or other type of vegetation on a bank this steep would probably create more issues than were created from the removal of the trees. So I completely agree with that recommendation, that we should see what grows back in that area and assess at a later time how that regrowth, how it reestablishes itself, and it can be revisited, but I think it's premature at this point to require plantings in that area. It should be a wait-and-see type of scenario for the bank itself. And I do agree that there should be a subsequent site visit just to assess some of the barren areas. There was one area in particular over facing the backyard over on the left-hand side on the bank, this area here, where there seemed to be a large patch of just exposed soil, and it could grow in, but it's just an area that kind of raised a red flag with me, because I started to see some evidence of runoff just from what had occurred post-cutting. So that might be a candidate area for some form of temporary erosion control, like jute matting or some sort of silt fencing or something along those lines, just to stabilize that area. Spreading of straw. There's a variety of different techniques out there that can be employed to alleviate any erosion concerns. So I certainly agree that we should not be planting on the bank. It should be a wait and see, and that doesn't mean it would never occur. It just means we're just going to look and see how the area recovers naturally. And given how thick the bank is vegetated currently, it is quite likely that it will fill in over time. And you've got sassafras on the bank too, and that's a very fast-growing species. So that's likely what you'll probably see propagate in that area and other areas on the bank. I like the species list as far as the buffer zone. This area where you see removal of existing lawn, and you've got a variety of different shrubs and ground cover in this area. The one recommendation that I had for the commission and for the applicant is in our mitigation regulation, it does call for trying to get a mix of vegetative strata to recapitulate a natural wildlife kind of setting. So, and vegetative strata can include ground cover, shrub level, understory, and trees. So I had recommended a couple of different species of trees. I was my recommendation was a minimum of 5 trees to be planted. Some of these could replace even some of the shrubs or take it, be implemented in areas where there's identified bearberry and huckleberry. With not, the purpose of blocking up any existing view, but kind of off to the sides, but still enhancing the buffer zone to the coastal bank in appropriate areas, and areas that would be most advantageous for the particular species that would be selected. So some of the examples that I provided would be either American holly, shadbush, or eastern red cedar, or even a type of dogwood or something like that. These are all trees that don't get particularly large. Hollies can, but species like red cedar and shadbush, I think would be very appropriate for the site, and it would just add that additional strata layer of vegetation to make this include all layers of vegetation. So you'd have ground cover, you'd have shrubs, and you'd have trees. And given when you're dealing with the loss of mature-sized trees, which some of the ones on the bank were, that's a pretty significant amount of habitat loss and nesting habitat for a variety of bird species. So getting the trees as part of this mitigation, I think, just makes sense given the violation that took place. So the other issue that I had brought up, and it's really not related to the aspect of mitigation for this, but the plan itself does call, this is just for the landscaping portion around the house, does identify this area here. I believe it's, might make it out.
725.
I think it's 725.
725 square feet?
25,
Yeah.
925.
925, okay, that's what I thought it was. So, in the order of conditions, Joe, it prohibits any lawn within 50 feet of the bank. So you can't have lawn there. It was identified on the plan, on this revised plan, but you can see the 50-foot buffer line there, the dashed line that runs across here. From this point out to the coastal bank, under our local nitrogen control bylaw, you can't establish lawn in that area. And this looks to be like newly established lawn, if I'm not correct. If I'm mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This area of removed turf, for the mitigation area, seems to be what's existing lawn on the property right now. And then off to the side here, you've got basically just exposed dirt with ornamental plantings. So you can't establish new lawn within 50 feet of the coastal bank. So we are going to require a revised plan for the landscaping portion of this to keep this, to identify lawn areas outside the 50-foot buffer. Inside, you can do, some type of native ground cover. You can do mulch. You can do a clover lawn, 100% clover lawn.
Yeah, it's mulch now, I think.
Yeah.
Mulch and rock.
Right. So it's up to you as far as what you want to do. It just cannot be turf grass. That is prohibited. So, and that is a condition in your order of conditions. So the plan needs to be changed to reflect that, because this plan is misleading as it currently exists when it comes to lawn.
Can it be some type of patio material? Because we are losing quite a bit on that left side, and I'm just wondering if we can maybe wrap it around.
I think if you were to propose patio, you would need to amend this order of conditions for something like that. That's not something that
Get
we
that.
can just readily accept, because this is a condition that was already,
Okay.
reviewed and put in place by the commission.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't think you can sub out with patio at this point, not without an amended order process. So that will be a requirement, that you have this plan amended to show whatever is going in here, you can have it identified, called out on the plan. And then, from the 50-foot back, you can identify the square footage of lawn that's proposed outside the 50-foot setback.
Look, there's many alternatives, ground cover, native ground covers that you could use as well, that would function essentially as a lawn, as far as having it be usable space for people, such as clover, as Drew had mentioned. So I would just keep that in mind if
Okay.
you want to kind of maintain that area as such.
Yeah,
Clover
just,
clover can
it's
be
the only
very-
place to really kind of soften the house up.
Sure,
So-
sure.
And clover can, act very similar to lawn as far as from a recreational standpoint,
Yeah.
but it is much more beneficial
Okay.
than lawn, and doesn't require anywhere near the amount of maintenance turf grass can require. So I think that pretty much covers all of my comments. And I can hand it over to the commissioners if the commissioners have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Drew.
Sure.
Questions and comments from the commission?
I have a question. It doesn't show on this plan, but where is the existing house that's, I mean, one of the things that was mentioned was holding off on the mitigation because during the demo process, it would be detrimental to what's planted, but I'm not quite sure how close that is to that area.
So the house is in the same footprint. So the house is basically in the same footprint.
The same footprint as what's being proposed.
Basically, yeah, we're not really moving the house at all. In fact, what we lose is the grass area, and we lose half of the patio area, but not the foundation structure.
So it is,
So-
yeah, as far as the setback, it's actually, I think it's set a little further back, or just as
3
far.
feet.
It's not closer to the coastal bank than what you see on this plan.
Yeah.
The footprint overall is larger than the existing house.
Correct, this
But the
going
setback
towards,
is- yeah.
going towards the street.
Correct,
Yeah.
but the setback to the coastal bank is pretty much the same as what you see here
Yeah.
for this structure. Sorry, I should have included that plan for your reference, but yeah, that is, the
probably have
setback is unchanged.
Well, getting back to holding off on this, does that include the plantings that would be on the seaward side of that siltation barrier?
Over on this side here?
Uh,
That's what you're-
No, that barrier between the smaller profile bushes
Silt
and,
fence, and then there's the plantings behind the silt fence there.
Yeah, I think,
Another one.
based on Bob's recommendations, that all of this be held off until the reconstruction is complete.
and what about on the other side of that barrier?
This area,
Yes,
same thing,
same thing.
yeah, the whole area, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what your recommendation was?
It is, but you have the person who's going to be sort of supervising the demolition and construction.
So I have two concerns. One is that, as Tom would know, I'm not sure of the timetable based on the availability of material,
Sure.
number one.
Right.
Number two, it's not a huge space to maneuver around. It is on the left side, and it's really tight on the right side. And there's a couple of retaining walls that need to come down. So I think it would be in the best interest of the property to let them work around the area without worrying about hurting any of the new plantings. It's not like there's this huge amount of room. It's only actually 12 feet on the right corner and on the left corner. So there's not a lot of room for a big machine to go in there and rip that out.
Yeah, I mean, from construction overreach, based on my experience in dealing with tear-down rebuilds, there can be a lot of, just from an access standpoint, a lot of disturbance, even beyond, sometimes beyond the shown work limit on a plan. So I would agree that this planting plan really should hold off until such time as the whole site is completed with construction and stabilized. So that you don't run into, other situations where you'd have to set up erosion control because of exposed soil, or exposed conditions, disturbed conditions on the site lingering from construction activity. I think it just makes the most sense, because all of this, work can be done by hand, so you don't really need, vehicle access back here for the mitigation portion. But I just foresee, too much disturbance, too many chances if you establish mitigation that it could get damaged, and it's just not worth taking that risk.
The good news is the septic system is up front in the driveway, so we won't be digging where the original septic system is currently.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment?
Chad?
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you. I concur with everything that Mr. McManus has said. It's easy for us to change the plan that's on the screen right now to add the trees, eliminate the lawn area. This was put together very quickly. I was on vacation for 2 weeks. I was only able to get to the site on Monday. Mike Curadosi basically had to whip this together so we'd have something to present tonight. We fully expected there would be some questions and concerns, and nothing that has been said tonight is insurmountable for us to bring this into compliance with your Regulation 12. And I think the best thing perhaps is for Mike Curadosi and Drew and possibly myself to meet out there and look at that bare spot on the coastal bank, discuss with Mike exactly what needs to change on the plan, and he'll make those changes and submit the plan to Mr. McManus, and I think we'll be ready to go. There's just one further fly in the ointment here, and it seems that in this day and age, nothing goes smoothly. You folks asked for a contract for a 3-year monitoring, and I included what I have put together at this point, but I don't intend to be the person to carry this out for the full 3 years, because about a year or a year and a half from now, I hope to actually be retired from this line of work. So if that is the case, we will make arrangements to hand this off to another wetland scientist who can pick up the ball and continue the monitoring for the requisite period of time. As we've set this up right now, the first year monitoring won't initiate until the planting is done. Now, if it happens to be done in the late spring, then year 1 will run from late spring next year to the spring of the following year. So we will have to tweak perhaps the dates and times in this, but it's basically a 3-year monitoring. I just wanted you to know that I might not be the one doing the 3 years.
Understood.
Yeah, we'll get you straightened out.
The other, since you touched on that, Joe, the other situation is that, if this timeline of monitoring and maintenance rolls over into a new ownership, the new owners are going to have to be made fully aware of that situation.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Yeah, I'm sure you already knew that, but just bears repeating. So they're not, caught off guard or unaware. It'd be
Yep.
best to,
Not a problem at all.
communicate that sooner than later, so. I guess, I would just ask if the commission has any concerns about what was discussed, any feedback, ideas, or if you're okay with what's being presented. As it was described, it is a rather fluid situation, just given the time of year that we're currently in right now, and with the construction activity that, could pose an issue if we were to require plantings sooner than later. So does any of the commissioners I'd ask have any issues or feedback in terms of what's been presented, my recommendations, and the overall timeline of this mitigation and compliance scenario?
Drew, I'm just curious about the fence on this coastal bank. Is this supposed to be removed? I haven't heard anything about that.
I would assume that if we can remove it, we'd like to remove it, yes.
Yes. Yeah, the property owner said yes, they would like to remove it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to just make one more comment. the plants that have been suggested, both by Mr. Curadosi, myself, and Mr. McManus, are all appropriate for coastal setting. But I think the commission should also look at this in the reality of the times. My biggest problem this current year with restoration projects was obtaining adequate stock. We put together a plan in Fairhaven to be implemented in the month of May of this year, and approximately 50% of the stock that we had planned was not available in southeastern Massachusetts. So we had to do substitutions, and even though we're calling for certain plants, we might not get beach plum, we might not get the bayberry, but rest assured that what does get planted will be from the approved list for the coastal setting, and we'll go from there. But I just wanted to let you know that the nurseries are all having problems. The people who install these plants are having problems, and it may improve by next spring, but who knows? It may be the same.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's understood. There can be some delays, and when we issue enforcement orders, we've always been, willing to work with the property owner, as far as timelines. We have stipulated timelines, but they are flexible based on, demonstration of compelling hardship, and things like that, availability of contractors, availability of nursery stock, all of those things are just reality. And so as long as the ball keeps rolling, so to speak, and we keep achieving, getting closer and closer to full compliance, I think that's the most important thing in any sort of restoration scenario. So, but I appreciate you bringing that up, because it is, and we've seen it on other sites too, and mitigation plans have changed as a result of just the lack of what was originally presented on a plan. Substituted out, but the bottom line is it will be conducive to that particular area, and the type of plantings that are chosen are always going to be of a high wildlife habitat benefit, whether it's bearberry or beach plum or some other variety. That's always going to be the common theme. So
my comment would simply be I agree 100% in regards to the delay of the thing, because anytime you have a tear down and a rebuild in space like this, anything, even if you set up a limits of clearing, it still oozes over into the area. It's just brutal. And that house in the lot to the right is very close to that property line. It may even be, a variance there in order to have built it in the first place. And a lot of shrubbery down that right-hand side, which is going to be destroyed, which is probably the neighbors, simply because of various activity going through there. So I think the best thing to do is to delay, as you suggested.
And in the order that we issued, there is provisions for, runoff and erosion controllers in relation to the demolition and construction. So this area will be protected from the work limit line, and we'll make sure that remains in good shape throughout the construction period. So.
Okay.
Okay. So it's nothing that the commission needs to vote on or anything like that. Is this just a kind of preliminary review of what has been accomplished so far, which I'm happy to see that the compliance procedure has started and will continue throughout the project until project completion, until we get a final plan in place, and then implementation either in the spring or fall of next year, depending on the whole timeline and sequencing of the project itself.
So I understand that they need to come back with a plan with some of the modifications that you have suggested to that plan.
Yes.
Then that would be what
And
they will
we
be
could
shooting.
present that as a pre-agenda item for you to review, once that gets finalized.
Good.
And we'll continue to keep the commissioners up to date about the progress that's been achieved, once the plan has been finalized and implementation starts. So.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, Drew, when you're ready with the paperwork, we'll start with the 6 o'clock hearing.
First three hearings have all been requested to be continued, Chad, so we can go through them, starting whenever you're ready. But the commission does have to make motion and voting on each continuance, so you can call the first hearing for 6 o'clock when you're ready.
Very well. Now calling the 6 o'clock hearing for Mark R. and Robin L. Galante, 164 Captain's Row, proposed relocation of existing home and construction of a single-family home, hardscape and landscape modifications, and septic system upgrades, and requested to be continued by the applicant. This is an NOI.
Yeah, so the hearing has been requested to be continued to October 28th at 6:12 p.m.
If there's no discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
I would move that we continue the application of Mark R. and Robin L. Galante at 164 Captain's Road from this evening to 10/28 at 6:12 p.m.
Second.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Charlie. Now voting. Tom.
Aye.
Brian.
Yes. Oops.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Sorry, did I call the wrong person? We set or we good?
We're good.
We're good.
Good, we're good.
Yeah.
All right. Paul.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next is the 603 hearing for Frederick C. Mercier III, Trustee Mercier Nominee Trust, 254 Monomoskoye Road. Proposed replacement of existing pier, bulkhead, and section of marine railway. This is an NOI, and this has been requested to be continued as well, Drew.
Yes, sir. Request a continuance for October 28th at 6:15 p.m.
There's no discussion. We'll entertain a motion.
I would move that we continue the application of Frederick Mercier and the Mercier Nominee Trust at 254 Monomoskoye Road to 11?
No, October 28th.
October, okay, I'm sorry, 10/28 at 6:15.
There's no discussion. We'll entertain a second. Oh, I guess that is the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charlie. Now voting. Tom.
Aye.
Brian.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now calling the 606 hearing for Paul S. and Susan M. Schenkoff, 338 Monomoskoye Road, proposed replacement, expansion of floats and vista pruning. Cape and Islands Engineering, this is an NOI and has been requested to be continued as well.
Yes, and this has been requested to be continued to October 28th at 6:18 p.m.
There's no discussion. We'll entertain a motion.
Move that we continue the application of Paul S. and Susan M. Scheinkoff at 338 Monomoskoye Road to October 28th at 6:18.
Thank you,
Second.
Brad. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Charlie. Now voting. Tom.
Aye.
Brian.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay.
Now calling the 609 hearing, Thomas J. Mace, 123 James Circle, proposed replacement and expansion of existing deck. Representative is the homeowner, and this is an RDA. The homeowner is present. If you could approach the microphone and introduce yourself for the record and speak your piece.
Hi, I'm Tom Mace.
Just a description of what you're.
We want to replace and expand our existing deck. Excuse me.
I can give the commission some background on this. So this is the subject property. This is the lagoon area in the southern end of Johns Pond. So your resource areas associated with the property, the property are inland bank, which is right along the shoreline, just above the shoreline of the pond here. We'll go to the plan. Here's the proximate inland bank right here. And then you've also got some bordering vegetated wetland in this area. Existing lawn, landscaped areas, there's a shed over here, and then it goes up to the existing deck and single-family home driveway on the streets, on the side of the house, and another driveway off this side here. Project is pretty simple. You've got an existing deck that's proposed to come out 8 feet from the existing structure. And just to show you some photos of the site, this is top left, looking at the house just down gradient from the existing lawn area. You can see here, may not show up too well, but this is the staking and line here that shows the deck coming out to the proposed 8-foot extension here. Just another view on the bottom left, you can see the existing lawn, again, line coming out and across here to show the staking of the proposed deck expansion. And then you've got some bordering vegetated wetland. You can't really see the bank. It's a very slight inland bank, but it does meet the slope criterion. And then beyond that, you've got land under water bodies and waterways associated with the lagoon area of Johns Pond. And then bottom right, just to give you another shot, this is kind of a mix of, there's some planting here. This is mostly ornamental material, native material with some ornamental material mixed in. And then the further down the bank, it transitions into all native material here. So, going back to the project, your resource areas and the performance standards, there's no impact to the inland bank, there's no impact to the bordering vegetated wetland. And the setback, and I did do just a quick measurement today just to verify that this area of proposed expansion is indeed outside the 50-foot. And the measurement from top of inland bank actually came out to 52 feet. So it's slightly outside the 50-foot buffer. Therefore, does not trigger mitigation or a waiver requirement that may trigger mitigation under our regulations, as it's entirely outside the 50-foot setback to top of inland bank, which is your most landward resource area. No other comments, and I would recommend a negative determination.
I'm just going to read the building department comments into record. The building department issued a permit in error previously, and we've notified the owner to obtain determination from Conservation Commission.
Questions and comments from the commissioners?
Pretty straightforward. Hearing none.
Everybody good?
Yeah, I don't hear any comments, so.
Like to allow a little extra time because I'm out here in cyberspace. Are there any questions from the phone or in the room?
No, it's just the applicants here in the room, and nobody's called in on this application.
If no more discussion, we'll entertain a motion. This is an RDA.
Would move for a negative determination in regards to the application of Thomas Mace at 123 James Circle. For a negative.
Thank you, Brad. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charlie. If there's no more discussion, we'll begin the voting. Tom?
Aye.
Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
So, just to clarify, when you hear the word negative determination, that actually means that negative in the context that there's negligible impacts to the resource area, and therefore it does not need to be conditioned under notice of intent and is approved as presented.
All right, thank you very much.
It's a little counterintuitive language there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that word too. I was like, wait a minute.
No,
You always
very
make a
And
point
they're
to
all
clarify
saying
that.
yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
luck.
everybody.
Sure. Okay. We'll move on to the other pre-post agenda items. We like to load up the agenda with those when we have a short agenda.
Thank you, Drew.
My pleasure. All right, so, okay.
See how the signatures?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of discussion items on some violations, and we're going to try and be consistent about this when we encounter violations to bring the commission up to date about what we discovered and, and what we have in place for compliance moving forward. So you've got this, this is a situation where Cape and Islands had contacted our department. They had been hired by the homeowner at 7 Santua Pond Road. This is a property here you can see highlighted. This is all inland bank leading down to what was once a cranberry bog that is now just transitioned into a freshwater bog type of resource area. The house is pre-existing non-conforming, built over a portion of the inland bank. And then you've got the remaining bank that leads down to the resource area. So here's just a picture of a plan that was approved. This was back in, I want to make sure I get my dates correct here. So back in 1998, order conditions issued for this single-family home, which you see here on the left image. You got associated appurtenances, driveway, septic system, and a deck out here, and then you can see this line here. This is the silt fence and work limit. A subsequent amended order and RDA were filed after this initial order conditions was issued for the single-family home. And that was to request an additional driveway here off the road. This existing driveway dips down to a garage underneath the house. So they had requested an additional driveway, some areas of grass plantings, and then areas of retaining wall off to the sides along the work limit. And then you can see here's the resource area, top of inland bank, sloping down to edge of BVW associated with the abandoned bog area. And this is just a side profile to show what the retaining wall areas here off to the sides look like. So all of that is in place today. The grass actually was never put in, but the driveway's there. This driveway exists, footprint of the house. And then this was a required condition under the orders to provide a drainage basin here because the driveway does slope down off the road. It was a paved driveway to capture the runoff because from here down it still slopes down the inland bank towards the wetland. So that was part of the requirement under the order of conditions for a single-family home. So that's the background. So when the homeowner, this is actually a previous homeowner, this is a situation where a certificate of compliance request was never made, no certificate of compliance was issued, and somehow the home got sold to new homeowners. It happens because title searches done sometimes don't reveal everything that should be revealed, and that really comes down to who's doing the title search, the attorneys involved, and who does the proper research to see if all of these liens have been closed out and removed from the title. So it was discovered subsequent to the sale of the home, which took place this past May. And as a result, we were contacted after Cape and Islands had conducted their inspection, and they noted a number of issues that, in their opinion, precluded any sort of recommendation for an issuance of a certificate of compliance. So I had outlined and described what took place, and I'll go to the photos just so I can show you what the issues are. So going back up to the plan real quick, you can see this was the first issue that you can see the deck was proposed to be centered on the back of the home. These are the decks that exist today. I'm assuming that this was the deck that was intended to be centered in this area, and then a secondary deck was constructed without any permit. Also, this existing deck here, I had shown this image to the building department, and they immediately realized that this deck is not built according to code, and neither is the stairway. So that's a separate issue for the building department, in addition to us, that we don't have a record of a second deck. And the existing deck, whether it's the elevated one or the one closer to at grade, is not in the position that was shown on this approved plan of record. So that's one of the issues that was discovered. The drainage basin here that you can see in the driveway. So there was an RDA that was filed and approved, issued a negative determination in 2006 for this driveway and this driveway to be resurfaced with pavers. And I apologize, I meant to include an image of the driveway for tonight's presentation. Both driveways have been resurfaced with pavers. Now, there's no direct correspondence or communication as to why that was requested. I can only assume that because the drainage basin was not installed, this was, offered up by the homeowner as an option to deal with runoff, and the commission at the time approved it in lieu of a catch basin. I don't have any documentation to that effect. I'm just kind of hypothesizing that that's the reason why the homeowners came forward with, at the time, with paver driveways.
What kind of pitch would you guess there is on the paved driveway? I mean, would it have been approved as a paved surface simply because of
I think so.
the
I
degree of
didn't really
pitch?
see any issues with runoff.
Okay.
That's the first thing I wanted to look for when I was looking at the driveway. There's no runoff issues with the secondary driveway up here. That's all pretty flat.
Mhm.
And if it remains flat in this area, as you can tell from the grades, it's a much more gentle slope in this area than it is getting back here. But this is a pretty steep pitch going down this existing driveway. And they do have a low profile kind of, stone landscaping here that runs along the back underneath the fence. So I took a look at the area behind here, and I didn't really see any evidence of runoff. So it seems to be doing its job with the pavers and controlling any kind of runoff issues. Didn't see anything that raised a red flag there. Then you get into the last issue that we discovered, which is these are photos of the standing about halfway down the bank here, looking back up at the house. And these are other photos looking at the backyard, which is all in the bank. So going back up to the plan here, you can see that this is the work limit. So, and here's the top of the bank. So all this area was never meant to be disturbed. This is what it looks like today. Top right photo,
Wow.
bottom left photo. There's some scarce shrubbery back here, but for the most part, it's been completely denuded and wiped out. There's some scattered trees, but it's certainly not as vegetated as it was supposed to remain, because there's just nothing proposed here, and there was nothing subsequent proposed in this area since this order of conditions was issued. Nothing under the RDA, nothing under the amended. All this area was to remain undisturbed for all intents and purposes, and we never received any requests for any work back here.
Drew, is that a chain link fence?
Yeah, that's the other, sorry, that was, the other issue is that there is a perimeter chain link fence that was put around this cleared area. And again, we don't have any record of any permit requests.
Does it
for
go
that.
around the whole yard?
It does, yeah, they have dogs.
Probably had a dog or
They have
something.
dogs, yeah, so, yes, it does encompass.
Or if they start
all
rolling down the hill, they'll end up in.
right. Yeah, that too, where kids will get away from them. So this, to me, this is the most substantial non-compliance issue. I think the issues of, the decks, and, what was the other one? Yeah, well, the decks.
Stairs, you said something.
Yeah, and the stairs, and, this can be dealt with through the building department, and, if they were to, my suggestion was that, and I corresponded with Cape and Islands, because they wanted to hear, what my take was once I completed my own inspection. And it's a bit of a convoluted situation, because you do have the sale of the home that has gone through. The new homeowners are completely innocent of any of this, because this work, based on what I saw, this was, clearing that had started probably a number of years ago, and then probably went through a series of progressions and more clearing over the years. So I don't believe that the current homeowners are really responsible for any of this, especially considering that they moved into the house in late May of this year. None of this looks like it was done particularly recently. There was some grass seed that was strewn about the backyard on the bank. And as you can see here, some of the grass seed along the top of the bank had started to grow. I did inform the homeowners of jurisdiction. I just wanted to give it to them as an FYI. I didn't get into the violations when I spoke to the homeowners. I just said I was there to do an inspection. And we were dealing with the previous homeowners in terms of getting a certificate of compliance. But I did inform them of jurisdiction, just so they were aware, and they were completely unaware that Inland Bank was under jurisdiction. So they have been informed, and I told them, don't, if you're doing anything anywhere on the property, including right up to the road, because it's all jurisdiction, give us a call first, so we can assess what you're proposing. Like I said, this situation is a bit convoluted, and I'm not quite clear on how this is going to pan out, because we are dealing with new homeowners, and the previous homeowners, this could have even been done from the homeowners before that, because they're not the original ones. So the timeline of this is still very much up in the air as far as when this took place. I believe they had been transferred the property back in 2003. And then before that, this order of conditions was issued to the homeowner before that. So it's hard to tell when these changes took place. The decks don't look all that old. It's reasonable to assume that these decks were put in place post 2003. But I have no real documentation or proof of when any of this took place. So my feedback to Cape and Islands was that I recommended that the previous homeowner file for an after-the-fact notice of intent to cover the decks, and obviously in the meantime, check with the building department to make sure that the existing decks meet code, and if they do, or any amendments thereof, that would be also included in the subject of a notice of intent after the fact. After the fact, fees would apply. And then as far as the clearing in the backyard, that could be a condition of an order of conditions through that notice of intent process, or it could also be the subject of an enforcement order. The big unknown here is, what sort of avenue are we allowed to pursue? And I'm quite sure town council is going to have to get involved with this to get his opinion on, how we go about achieving compliance in a situation where a home has already been sold. Is it incumbent upon the present homeowners to deal with the situation? And I sincerely hope not, but it could possibly end up that way. Is it the previous homeowners, or is it the homeowner before that? So all of that needs to be hashed out, because I don't know the answer to any of it. One way or another, we're going to work towards getting this into compliance, is the bottom line. But I just wanted to bring you all up to speed on this one, because it's an unusual scenario. It's a bit convoluted. But it's certainly a situation that, is going to require some substantial mitigation, and, retro permitting in some fashion to bring the existing conditions into compliance. But at this stage, we're not going to entertain any application for a certificate of compliance, and the lien will stay on the deed, and that's going to serve as motivation from the previous homeowner to hopefully cooperate. So we'll see what happens there. Does anyone have any questions on that?
No, I just couldn't agree more that that's one of the biggest problems that you have with transfer of ownership of a property, whether it's conservation issue or if it's just some other regulation. Real estate people are pushing the sale of it. Now they don't even have to push it. They just make someone know it's aware and it's sold. And no one ever goes back and checks anything.
No.
It happens in almost every department and in every association that's trying to make sure the property is maintained properly. So it's a headache, a real headache.
It really is very frustrating, because this is, certificate of compliance is supposed to be the catch-all, when you encounter violations like this. And if it's getting skipped over, glazed over, or just not noticed, that's a situation that's pretty alarming, because, it leads to this kind of, current situation where you're really not sure how compliance is going to be achieved. And it's most certainly going to get into, a legal battle, for sure. I can picture it, just based on the existing circumstances. So very frustrating situation to deal with, and it's not the first time that this has happened. It's like you said,
Could very well end up to be another cost associated with selling a house or buying a house, because you're gonna have to send somebody out to the property to make sure that the conservation people are satisfied with what's there. You're gonna probably have to go out and take a look at the septic, so the health department's gonna be interested in it.
Yeah,
Everybody
given
will
all
wanna
the
do an inspection.
given all of the violations here and the building code, just looking at that deck makes me cringe. How far out it's extended from the underbracing, it just screams safety violation. And I really do. I feel for the homeowners, the current homeowners who inherited this situation, and hopefully we can find a pathway towards compliance where they're not punished as a result of this. So. Moving on to the next situation, this is being dealt with through an enforcement order that we had you sign tonight. 3 Bay Road, we were alerted to this violation that a resident had noticed a bobcat activity on the property. They knew it was within wetlands jurisdiction, so they called us to have us check it out. So when I went there, the homeowner was there. I noticed the bobcat right away. I pulled up the plan, the last plan of record that we have, which is for the home construction. And you can see here, just going back, you've got a garage with living space above, and then you've got the single-family home here. A little bit of lawn on this side, and then mostly naturally vegetated around the remaining perimeter of the home. So you can see here, this is what was approved on the last order that was issued, the first order of conditions to have this lot developed. You can see here, this is the delineated top of bank. So the bank really wraps around, half the lot here. So you've got some pretty, substantial areas of jurisdiction all around the existing house and garage with varying setbacks. So this is what took place. As I said, this is the first thing I noticed was the bobcat when I pulled up. So the homeowner had gone around the home and graded out all of the existing ground cover and what he claimed to be lawn at the time when I spoke to him. The first thing I did, as is typical in situations like this, is issued a stop work order. So I signed that and handed it to him and explained, this is wetlands jurisdiction. I want you to cease and desist any further activities because it looks like this, was just getting started basically, and there was more to come. So that was the first step. Going around this side, this is the area of coastal bank here. I'm looking at this image on the top right. Coastal bank wraps all the way around, and the bottom left photo is a continuation of this bank that you can see wrapping around the seaward side here, and then continuing all the way to the end of the property in this direction. So the coastal bank just basically wraps around the side and rear of the home. And all of this area, basically from the 0-foot line from top of bank back to anywhere from 10 feet to 25 feet varied along, had just been scraped up of the ground cover. Now, the homeowner at the time had claimed that this was all lawn, but looking, and you can't really see too well, but looking in this area, this is the side of the home over here. This is this area, this photo right here. And then it wraps around to the existing deck. These, you can kind of make out, these are all exposed roots. They're not lawn roots, these are shrub roots, and maybe even roots associated with saplings. So when he claimed that this area was existing lawn and he was just getting ready to restore it, pull out all that, I said, no, this is absolutely not lawn. And these roots were shown all the way around here, and then in some areas back here. So it was kind of one of these unmaintained lawn / ground cover combination type of settings. Positive note on this is that he was immediately cooperative, and I had asked him to remove, because what he had done when he excavated the soil is he pushed it right over the bank in these areas here. So some of these tree trunks were buried under 2 to 3 feet of fill, and in other areas the fill had been sent over the bank and smothered over some of this existing vegetation here that you can see. So I said the first thing you have to do immediately is you got to get these soils, this fill, off the bank, out from the tree trunks, store it somewhere in the upland where it's not going to leach back out if it rains, and then set up erosion control all along the top of the bank, and no further work until we get compliance and enforcement order out. So he did all that, and he did it the very same day, which was good to hear. He immediately, actually, this is him going out with a rake after I was on my way out, dealing with all the fill that had been pushed over the bank here.
Drew, is that a recently purchased property?
It was recently transferred. It's not a recent, yes. So it's a relatively new homeowner.
Right.
Yes, yeah, I would say
So
within.
do we have any record of that deck installation?
Right
It's on
here.
the plan.
Yeah, it's right here. That's the deck.
It looks like
Was that filed for us?
Yeah, this is part of the plan associated with the order conditions issued for the development of the lot. Is this plan here. So everything, as far as structures, everything is in line with what I saw out there. I didn't see any structural, projects that didn't meet this plan.
Yeah.
It was really just all this area around that he had scraped up all the ground cover and was getting ready to plant grass. So the question kind of remains, because you can't really tell from the GIS image what was out here on this side of the house. It kind of looks like, this is really probably the best image right here. He had said that this area was all lawn, probably just that kind of unmaintained lawn slash, exposed roots, ground cover, what have you. Basically an unmaintained lawn area. I have no way of knowing that. I can't find any kind of previous images associated with what this area looked like. So in the absence of that, what we basically have the burden of proof fall upon the homeowner that if he's claiming an area is lawn, show us photographic evidence of that. And in the absence, we're going to assume it was not lawn, and that it's subject to restoration. So that is going to be how we're going to approach this. Other areas where we saw the exposed roots, like here, it's obvious there was never lawn there, and that area will have to be restored. So that was the enforcement order that you just signed tonight. And you signed 2 copies because there's an off-Cape address and an on-Cape address for this homeowner. So we'll send the enforcement order to both addresses, and we will get this into compliance. And like I said, the good thing is that he was immediately cooperative. He was apologetic, and he's thoroughly willing to cooperate and do whatever is necessary. And he's already taken steps towards that. So that's this one's going to go a lot easier than the previous one.
What was the number, Bay Road, 3?
3 Bay Road. So yeah, going back up, Brad, to the this is Monmouth Square right here.
Yeah.
And then Point Road, and then you've got, so it's the last house on the right
And
there.
they certainly did it fast, because, that's a trail or a path that I walk on a pretty regular basis. I did
Yeah.
not see any of that. I mean, they obviously, probably didn't even take them half a day,
No,
with
because
a
I
path.
think he started it that morning, and I had
Yeah.
gotten out there like just after lunch, and that's what he had gotten through
Did not
already.
see anything.
Yeah. So like I said, and I'd gone through various GIS layers, previous year images, and I couldn't really get a sense of what is here. It's just, the image is just not clear enough to show whether there was existing grass there. So we're gonna go under the assumption that grass did not exist, in the absence of any proof that he can submit that grass existed. So we'll get that into compliance, and
Is there a dock associated with that property? No?
no. That was something the previous homeowners, when they were getting ready to sell, they did have a certificate of compliance procedure. And there was some sort of seasonal structure out here that, it wasn't actually out in the water, but it had been, I think it had been the subject of a denial, many, many years ago. And so they weren't able to put in a dock. They do have this area here, it's kind of like almost looks like a boat launch ramp of some kind. And I'm guessing just based on its appearance, let me just see if I can get it's over here in this area, right here in the background. So it looked like it was kind of like a grandfather type of setting. Again, I couldn't really find anything in the permits. Actually, I think there is a Chapter 91 license associated with this, but I'll find out for sure. And we're going to take a look at everything on this property and make sure that everything's into compliance.
Because there was lots of violations in this general area a long time ago. I'm talking about 20 years ago. I remember when I first came here, you were reading everything you could in the Cape Cod Times to see what was going on in neighborhoods. And there was a lot of violations in this particular area.
Yeah.
I don't recall any details, but it was a lot.
Even across the street over here, this property here.
Yeah.
He had done something similar. He had gone through and cleared ground cover all around this area. This is almost like a carbon copy of what happened over here. And,
I don't know anything more than I can recall that particular area. It was headlines in the Enterprise and stuff like that.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So,
Yeah, it was an extension of docks and things of that nature, little wetlands, as I recall.
does anybody have any questions on that? Like I said, we'll get the enforcement order out, and we'll get this, again, probably looking until next spring for actual planting, once a mitigation plan has been reviewed and finalized. So just wrapping up the updates, going through Childs River restoration. I know some of the commissioners had attended the ceremony there for the completion of that, or majority of completion of that project. It was extremely well put on by and set up by the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club. I'll speakers were there, state officials, Andrew Gottlieb, and various members of the Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge Partnership. So it was a really great turnout and a very, very well run event.
If you haven't been by it in the last week, I mean, it's totally different. Where the river winds through there, it looks like they've seeded it. They've got all kinds of shrubs and trees planted out there.
Really amazing, especially in the face of COVID, that they pulled all this off in the time they did. And there were some setbacks, but man, what an exceptionally well-organized group.
Next spring, you won't recognize it.
Yeah. So it is just an amazing restoration project. That the turnaround on it was, I think, the most impressive part, just given how it coincided with the height of COVID. So good to see. So Red Brook Road culvert, we still haven't heard about DER Priority Projects grant. Hopefully we're going to get it. But Betsy Gladfelter, who filled out that application, she's one of the commissioners in Falmouth. She had identified just recently this week a new potential funding source, again from DER. It's their dam removal grant, which could possibly apply to this situation. And so we're gonna go after and apply for that as well. And in the meantime, we're still waiting to hear from the Priority Projects grant application. No new updates from Upper Quashnet, though I think that you'll start seeing some information as far as conceptual restoration within the next month or so from Horsley Witten. No updates, bylaw review committee. I'm still trying to eke out time to get back to that, and I apologize it's taken so long, but I am starting to see a window of opportunity, particularly because we have hired a secretary for the position.
Okay.
So, yeah, we finally found someone who said yes. Hallelujah.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
So that's going to open up a significant chunk of time for Caitlin and myself to do everything outside of the administrative duties and processing of permits. It'll be nice to finally be free of those chains and get out and start doing other work. So
Treat them well so they don't leave.
yes, of course, like royalty.
Be nice.
Royalty. We have a big celebration in the office.
Nice.
Johns Pond milfoil treatment took place on October 12th. I think I forwarded you all summary notes of how that went down. It sounded like it was very successful. We were pushing the envelope in the season as far as dormancy for milfoil, but they believe they achieved significant treatment up to 90%. And so that's good to hear. It'll all be revealed next spring when the growing season starts again. And they will do another survey to see any areas that they might have missed, or planting the milfoil may have gone dormant and just wasn't exposed to this treatment, and then that'll be assessed at that time. But the bottom line is any remaining areas of milfoil will be dealt with and eradicated based on that subsequent survey, and we'll just find a way to get funding to get that done, because most of the funding that I have requested for this has been used for the surveying, and it went from 4 acres to 8 acres. So it was double in size, but luckily the funding I had requested from the Finance Committee covered that additional area, which was unknown at the time. So I'm glad we got the funding in place to cover everything that they had surveyed, and we will continue to update the commission once additional survey post-treatment takes place, and we'll
Ought to give Jack Bates a merit badge of some kind,
yeah.
because he is dogged on that.
It's
that
good.
pond.
Good to see that residents like him were cognizant of this and made us aware of it. And I only wish that the time it took to fill out the permit and get all the levels of permission had just been expedited a little bit more, so we could get 100% coverage and not run so late into the season for treatment. But like I said, I think it worked out well. And their turnaround, the company's turnaround time, after we issued the order, was fantastic. Getting out there doing the surveying, and when we had gotten the permit order recorded, and so everything was very fast tracked once the whole application procedure was over with. So that's good. Kate, you want to give an update on Chop Take?
Sure. On the 28th meeting, Neil Price from Horsley Witten will be here to go over the conceptual restoration design for Chopcheck Bog. We had extended the contract to the 31st for them to produce a document. We also recently sent the conservation restriction document draft to town council for review, and it has a few other levels of review after that through the Department of Fish and Game and the Army Corps of Engineers, but that'll all hopefully be done sooner rather than later. And we also are, Mark Robinson from the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust is working on a baseline report for the parcel as well.
Yeah, so that's continuing to move along. There's been a lot of small little amendments to contracts that have to bounce back and forth between each side and their counsel, their legal counsel, and so a lot of back and forth review for some of these timeline extensions and things like that. So once we get through all that, like I said, at the 20th instead of the 28th, you'll see a conceptual plan. Wesley Witten will be attending the meeting, Neil Price, and give the commission a full update on what to expect out there. And then the next phase, assuming we get funding for it, is actual implementation of a conceptual wetland restoration plan. So very exciting to see that happen. So, and I think that covers everything.
All right, Drew, Caitlin, thank you very much. Any questions, comments, or business from the commissioner?
Doesn't look like
Anyone in the audience or on the phone?
nobody's here but us. Just us.
All right. Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we conclude the meeting of, what is it, October? I don't even know.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Very good. Voting. Tom?
Aye.
Brian?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes?
Charlie?
Yes.
I vote all aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.